I think there's been so many changes in the last few years that finding a community that serves you and feeds your soul, and that you can also share some of your gifts and magic with other people, is really what it's all about.
Hello and welcome to Rediscovering Connection. I am Shelley Doyle and I'm very blessed today to have Trish Tonaj with me, an award-winning community builder, artist, author, MC. I'm sure there's many other things. I understand you went to law school as well. So really interested to dig underneath who Trish Tonaj really is. 5+ years ago, Trish launched a community called Share Your Stories, where she invites entrepreneurs to come on a live interview. So every Friday, I believe, Trish comes together with one of these entrepreneurs for kind of a fast 20-minute interview, of which I did one of these. In this industry, podcasting seems much more prevalent. So doing a live interview for me definitely pushed me out of my comfort zone. And then that also combines with a story that we put onto Trish's website, Share Your Stories. And then Trish does an amazing job of holding space for everyone that has published and spoken on her podcast, bringing us together at least quarterly for connection events, which are, I would say, I wouldn't even say semi-facilitated. They are very facilitated interactions, very intentional interactions, taking us off into breakout rooms and allowing us to share space with other really inspiring entrepreneurs from all over the world and all different walks of life. So personally, I've met some phenomenal individuals through this community. So this podcast with Trish is really a big thank you. Thank you for creating this community, for holding this space, and being incredibly generous with sharing the amazing connections that you have accumulated along your journey. So, hello and welcome, Trish. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure. I'm really looking forward to meeting the folks in your audience. And thank you so much for the wonderful introduction and mentioning share your stories online. So thank you for that.
Pleasure. So where did this come from? You've obviously had many different kind of career paths through your journey of life.
Mhm.
Was there a calling to kind of rediscover connection in a way of holding this community? Had that been yearning for some time before you bit the bullet and actually went for it? How did that occur?
You know, what was really interesting is I took a executive education course at Harvard Law School. It was on mediation and dispute resolution. And it was with 47 other individuals from around the world. And what I found was that we started sharing stories about really how we got there. You know, who were some of the people that helped us along the way? So this whole idea of mentorship really was born. And then throughout the process, I ended up leaving that course and writing my second book, Breaking Barriers: 10 Entrepreneurial Women Share Their Stories. And within 1 year of attending Harvard, I had another published book. And then I was out on the speaker circuit talking about mentorship and role models and the importance of, sort of the messaging that we leave behind. And I was meeting amazing individuals like yourself who said to me, how do I share my story? How do I do this? How do I get, noticed? How do you increase my visibility? And I started to think about that. And before long, I started a guest blog. At the time, I was doing marketing, consulting, and coaching with leadership teams. And we shared 100 stories in the first year. And it was shortly after that I bought the URL shareyourstories.online. And we ended up starting to feature, and we automated everything to make it easy peasy for folks. And we now have stories on 5 continents. We have over 300 people featured. And as you mentioned, our podcast, we have over 200 podcast guests where we sort of introduce the person behind the logo. And that's really the intention of the podcast.
So good. And you just seem to have got into such a good flow with it, like the consistency. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of people that start these podcasts and communities, it is about finding regularity and consistency that's
Mhm.
possible and positive. And I know you have pushed yourself in some ways, like you used to do a lot of panel discussions
Mhm.
with the speakers, and you that
Mhm.
that became a lot. So
Mhm.
finding what we can do alongside all of the other commitments that we have in our lives, right? How
That's
has that
true.
been to find the balance?
You know what's really wonderful is folks like you who have shared their story. We always invite you to invite other folks in your own network who may be interested in increasing their visibility. So it's really the referrals. I mean, I have to say that probably 80 to 90% of the people that are now sharing stories are wonderful individuals like yourself who say, you know what, this was really a great experience. I need to introduce some of my colleagues so that they too can share their story. So that's really how the community has grown. It's really been based upon trusted referrals. And I'm super appreciative of the people who sort of open up their Rolodex and say, look, you have to meet Trish. You've got to, increase your visibility on her podcast and in the guest blog. And it just really creates this wonderful symbiotic relationship.
Yes, and a couple of things that are coming up for me. Firstly, I feel like I need to say a thank you to Mia Jarrett, who
Who
introduced me
introduced
to
us?
you.
That's right.
And this is how this whole thing works. Is one
That's
person
right.
introduces another, and then it rolls on from there. Another thing to mention, I think, is that no money changes hands.
That's true.
So it feels like a very like positive, energetic exchange, kind of time and appreciation for time and appreciation.
Right.
And it's like we're all winning together. And I think, again, that this is where a lot of people get stuck in thinking, I don't know what to charge. I don't know what people want to pay. Did that occur to you? And is there a reason that you decided to just make this open and accessible for everybody?
I decided it was going to be my passion project. So I've been an entrepreneur since 1993, believe it or not. I'm probably dating myself a little. But I know what it's like. I've walked the walk and talked the talk for over 30 years of being an entrepreneur. And I really wanted to try to help other individuals. Really, one of the mantras that we've come up with is we want people to be seen, heard, found, and hired. And really, the whole essence of that is you need to be on multiple platforms with multiple folks talking about your story. And the only way that you can do that is by connecting with other folks, whether it's in your own community or globally. And the wonderful thing about our community is it has become global. We usually get, as you well know, we've got people from 5 different countries that usually participate in our quarterly networking events. We've got usually 7 different time zones of folks that are making time to meet, because we do really want folks to have heartfelt connections. And we've seen some awesome collaboration happening from the platform. We've got people in India who are collaborating with people in the United States. We have folks in France who are helping folks in Canada. So it's really wonderful. One thing I've learned this year that I can share, Shelley, is I've learned that we're all so different and yet the same. We appreciate so many similar challenges. And yet, at the same token, people are people. We're all human and we're all experiencing the same challenges, the same joys. And so, to be able to find someone in a community that's sort of non judgmental, where you know that everyone is in a similar sort of place, that's where the magic happens.
So good. And personally, I've made some amazing connections through your community. I recently had Jacqueline
Mm,
Olivero Seller on my podcast.
mhm.
Hirsch attended my recent workshop. And I'm very interested to speak to Susan, the book publisher, about
Crossman, yeah, Susan
yeah,
Crossman,
about
yeah.
the journey. So, yeah, such a high caliber of individuals who are all doing, I guess you said about this being your passion project. And I guess a lot
Mm-hmm.
of them, they're passionate entrepreneurs. They're doing
True.
things that are in their heart and that they feel passionate about telling. So, yeah, I've met some incredible people. Um, I feel like, oh, there's another piece about the magazine. So
Mhm.
you created a magazine partnership. So that magazine now features the stories that are told through your podcast and portal. Is that right?
It's really a wonderful, we've decided for 2025, 2026, we're going to launch a digital magazine that's going to be housed on the website. that will feature various different folks who want to celebrate their great ideas. But it's a sponsorship for our grant program. So the folks that are participating are actually going to be sponsors for our Share Your Stories Global Marketing Grant, which we started this past year. And as you know, you attended that ceremony. And we have two winners, one from Ireland and one from Canada. And it's seed money to help folks with their marketing budget. Because I can certainly say that in interviewing and speaking and sharing stories of all of the folks that we have, the similar challenge comes up, and that is funding. And funding gets in the way of innovation. It gets in the way of expansion. It even gets in the way of collaboration to a certain point, because we all have a certain budget that we're working with. Yes, it evolves and flows and changes at certain points and times of the year, but we only have a finite amount of money that we can put into marketing. So we started the marketing grant to help folks just with a little seed money that maybe they can try something a little bit different that they haven't tried before. So I'm really interested in seeing how the evolution of that comes about, because we also have formal mentorship. So 12 folks from the Share Your Stories community are offering 1 hour of their time for 1 month next year, who are now going to mentor the 2 grant recipients and help them to kind of expand their knowledge base so that they can be better humans and provide their products or services on perhaps a wider stage.
It seems like so much is happening with it. How do you make it all possible? Does it flow? Like, what's the phrase? It's always like following the path of least resistance. Is it one of these things that you've gotten going and actually now you've got the momentum, it actually almost drives itself?
To a certain extent, that's very true. But one of the things that I had to do, you were talking about your comfort zone and getting outside of your comfort zone. And I'm a big picture thinker. So, I've had lots of leadership positions where I had national and international responsibility, very much like yourself. So it's very hard to then think small once you've been thinking big. So one of the things that I had to do is I decided to have an advisory board. And we meet 4 times a year where I get to throw the spaghetti on the wall and say, listen, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? And sometimes they rein me in and say, ooh, that sounds like an awful lot. Like that might be a little more work in your passion project than you'd like to donate your time and effort to. But sometimes they push me out of the comfort zone. So, that was a classic example of the marketing grant. I was talking about the grant. We were talking about opportunities in various ways that we could now take the level of commitment to the Share Your Stories community a little bit larger. And they're the ones who said, you know what, I think you can do this. I think this is possible. So we came up with the phrase funding for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs, because it's folks like yourself who are participating in the grant program, and everyone gives a little so that we have enough. And it's really rather wonderful that we're able to connect with folks who, as you say, are very giving back to a community. They sometimes just need a community that they need to connect with. And ours seems to be the community that everybody is attracted to. And maybe it's because it's a passion project. Maybe it's because we have global reach, or maybe it's just because it feeds their objectives of being able to help other small business owners.
I know that the live events are quarterly, and I guess it's in the diary at least a month in advance, and you don't want to miss it. Are really intentional about being present. And, the screen was full. I don't know how many attendees there were on that awards ceremony, but there must have been at least 30, if not more.
Well, the funny thing was we had 60 people registered globally for the event. And I was talking to one of the sponsors, and she kind of made this face and said, you do know that only 10% of the people who register events actually show up. And I was like, geez, Louise, you got to be kidding. Only 6 people out of 60 are going to show up. And we actually topped out at 50 people. So 50 people attended the awards and grant ceremony. And I think that's a testament to the room. Who's in the room? Who can I connect with? Who are the like-minded folks that I'm going to be able to meet in some of those breakout sessions, which we use for networking? So I think that the energy in the room is what attracts people to attend our events. And I think also because they're on Zoom, so we try to make it obviously for global. I mean, I would love to say we could fly all over the world and be doing events live, in various different cities, but it's just not practical. And one of the wonderful things that's come out of COVID is these wonderful platforms, which we're now able to connect with people virtually all over the world. So we've taken advantage of some of the wonderful technology opportunities that have been made to us since COVID, and we're now using it to our advantage.
I was trying to do the maths in my head then, and I'm struggling. I have a bit of a cold, but that's definitely more than 10%.
Yes, for sure. Absolutely. When you say, well, I guess we had I would say about over 75%. I mean, we're almost at 90% of
Yeah.
attendance. And the wonderful thing about the quarterly networking events is we always have a speaker from the community that you've chosen. So, one of the things from the last event we had in September was people were talking about ways in which we can connect with testimonials. And so our speaker in February is actually one of our in-kind sponsors from the award ceremony. And she has this awesome platform with 30-second opportunities for us to share testimonials after a special event or, a speaking engagement. And so she's going to be our speaker. And then the folks in February will decide who will be our speaker in May. So you'll pick a topic, and then I'll find someone within the network who has that area of expertise, and we invite them to be a speaker for 5 to 7 minutes in the next networking event.
So good. Well, I just want to applaud you for the consistency and putting yourself out there and just making this happen, because you're really serving the community so well, and we're so grateful for you.
Thank you.
And anybody that's listening that wants an introduction to Trish, please let me know, and I'll be really happy to make that introduction so you can get your story up on Share Your Stories. Trish, is there anything that we haven't covered yet that you think you'd really like to share this? Maybe it's something big that's going to be happening for you or for your community in 2025.
I think the development and expansion of the grant program is something we're really going to put our heart and soul into. So, doing the annual magazine is a huge build because it's giving people a tangible asset. The sponsors will then have a tangible asset that they can use. And we're hoping that we'll get enough uptake that we can expand the grant program from 2 to 3 grants. And really, that's, I think, going to be the focus for the next few years, because, once you put yourself out there and you've established a network of folks who are supporting your cause, I think then you have to be really true to the cause. So we're really going to concentrate on, expanding our opportunities for the grant program, continuing to increase the visibility of folks like yourself who participate with us, and really continue to make those really wonderful, heartfelt connections that, they sort of cross the line from business into friendship too. And I think that's really an important part, because we're all, as humans, looking for the support of other people who are in small business. And I think there's been so many changes in the last few years that finding a community that serves you and feeds your soul, and that you can also share some of your gifts and magic with other people, is really what it's all about. So somebody said to me, "Are you ever going to quit?" And I said, well, probably not. As long as there are stories to share, I'll continue with the Share Your Stories initiative, just so that, because it not only feeds my soul, but hopefully it feeds all of the people that join us as well.
Totally. And maybe if you don't mind, I'm just going to ask one last question, just about it feeding your soul.
Mm-hmm.
And is it serving you? Like what I'm working on is like our social health and our social well-being. Like,
Mm-hmm.
do you feel that satisfaction when you come off either your Friday lives or the quarterly network? Like, does that fill you up? How does that serve you in your like everyday life?
I have to say, when I started my first business in 1993, it was pretty tough for female entrepreneurs. We didn't have, we had very few role models. We had no mentors. I often say when I was speaking, and when I started in business, a mentor wore a blue suit and a red tie. And there were very few females that we could look up to. So for me, it's all about giving back to that entrepreneurial community, because I don't think a lot has changed, which is really rather sad. If we start to look at the global statistics, even though there are 582 million entrepreneurs around the world, 76% are men who start businesses because funding is easier for them. Women are still struggling to be seen, heard, found, and hired because we live in a society that doesn't necessarily promote female entrepreneurship because we're not looked at as being business people. We're looked at in a totally different way in our societies. And that's being more nurturing and moms and role models and things like that. So I think that for me, it's so symbiotic and it's so amazing because I learn something from every single story I share. We all have to overcome obstacles and barriers. And I find that inspiring to read someone's story and say, wow, like, holy cow, that's a pretty amazing thing that they're doing. So one of the other things that I always share is we're all ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And that's really what the platform is all about. And I just find that the more people that I meet, the more joyful it actually makes me. And I've really become very proud of the community that we're building. And I think it's because of people like yourself who participate and give something of yourself to the community as well. So it's a very nurturing place to be quite honest. And even after 30 years of being in business, there's always something new to learn. And so I really love that about the community.
And I think you saying this is really going to be quite inspiring for other people that might be thinking that they've got a community that they want to birth, but thinking of all these obstacles and why nots.
Mhm.
And what would you say to somebody like that?
I have to say, if you have an idea and you have a passion and it keeps waking you up in the middle of the night and, you're journaling it and the same words keep coming up, or every conversation you have with your colleagues, this idea keeps popping into your head, I really do think then that you just need to take the leap of faith, step outside your comfort zone and do it, because what's the worst that could happen? Maybe people will find you and they'll think you're amazing and they'll start to follow your community. I mean, I can't think of anything better to happen. And even if the opposite is true, even if it's a slow go to start with, we all meet people in life for a certain reason. That's my philosophy. And so if you've been really thinking about something and it's niggling you in the back of your mind, what have you got to lose? Just take the bull by the horns and do it. Give it a try. And you know what? The more that we fail, the more that we learn. So the first try out of the gate, you may think, oh, geez, that wasn't very successful, but you may learn something from it. And then you can tweak it a little bit. And if it's meant to be, it will happen.
Fantastic words of wisdom. Thank you so much, Trish. It's been such a pleasure to get to know you and to get to know your story a little bit more.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
I look forward to continuing this journey together, and I wish you a very happy Christmas and New Year.
Thank you so much, Shelley, and to you.